School Board Candidate 4. Tonight we have with us Clementina Duron, Brian Doss, Charlie Blanchard, Sara Hinkley, and Ross Stapleton-Gray. Before we begin, just some quick things. In the situation of an emergency, exits are behind you and to the right side of the stage. We will be taping this forum and the video will be available on YouTube later tonight. Please no flash flood.
Tonight we will begin with pre-prepared questions, followed by a 5-minute intermission, and then we will open questions up to the audience. If you would like to ask a question, please write it on the card given to you at the door. And then in between questions, you can raise your hand and one of the students will come by and pick your question up. And then before the break, we will make a final call for questions to be passed in. Because we have a limited amount of time, we apologize if your questions are not asked. And we thank you for joining us tonight.
So before opening statements, we're going to be holding a minute of silence for the people who lost their lives in Pittsburgh. So just, will we begin now? Okay, thank you. We'll begin with opening statements.
Good evening. Can you hear me? My name is Clementina Duron, and I think you have a statement maybe for me, and so I just wanted to add a couple of additional bits of information about me. I ran 2 years ago for school board, and I lost by 1 vote. So because I'm persistent, I'm back tonight. Another thing, 50 years ago, in January, I was a student at UC Berkeley, and I and other students of color fought for ethnic studies and a third world college, and we were on strikes for all of the richer quarter. Since that time, I've been an activist in public education, promoting academic scholarship for all students and starting in kindergarten so that we can create an equal playing field for all students. A year and a half ago, I chaired the elementary curriculum committee for the superintendent's Albany coming together, whose purpose was to address racism and intolerance. And an unintended consequence of that, I was able to meet with some of Albany High School activist students, speak and stands, which inspired me to do my part and to run again. My basic platform focuses on school academic excellence, nurturing and safe school climate, and to hear and respect all stakeholders. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Brian Doss. I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank everybody for coming. Appreciate you taking the time out of your evening to come and listen to us. And we're excited to be here, excited to answer your questions. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. Not too long ago, I was a student here at Albany High. I won't age myself, but it was a little while ago. Currently, I serve as the site council president at Marin Elementary School, and also as the vice president for the Black Parent Advisory Group. That group was formed a few years back, and outside of that, you know, I try my best to be involved in the district wherever my help was needed. I decided to run for school board because I saw that there was a need. You know, when talking with people in the district, there was a common theme of diversity and lack thereof. So I thought that it was important to not just talk about things, but to actually be a part of the solution. So that was a lot of my motivation to be a part of the school board. I think that it's important, one thing that we want to make sure to keep at the forefront is why we're all here. I can speak for myself and say that it's important to be here for the students of the district. That's why we're here, that's why we're running for school board. And I'm passionate about that, and I look forward to serving the community.
So thank you very much for inviting us, for organizing this event. My name is Charlie Blanchard, and I'm running for re-election to the Albany School Board. I'm running because I care deeply about Albany schools and our students. I've been an active parent volunteer for over 20 years. I've participated in many fundraising efforts. I served on the board once before in the mid-2000s. What propelled me to the board in the mid-2000s was my concern about budget cuts. And here we are today looking at budget cuts again. So I've seen what happens when the district eliminates support for art, for music, for counselors, for librarians. And it has an impact on students. It affects the quality of the educational program. That's what led me to join the board previously and what led me to work on restoring funding for schools. We're facing budget cuts again because state funding is 10 years behind the times and costs have been skyrocketing. So we need a thoughtful process for balancing the budget. We also need safe educational spaces for schools. Marin and Ocean View are seismically deficient. Albany Middle and Albany High School are overcrowded. We have a process going on to build new schools. That's an exciting process. I'm happy to be part of that. This is something we do when we work together. We go out, we raise money, and we volunteer, and we make the schools better. That's what I'm here for. That's what I want to do, and that's how I work.
I'd also like to thank everyone for coming, and especially for all the work I know you did organizing this forum. My name is Sarah. I'm the parent of a 4th grader at Ocean View and a 7th grader at Albany Middle School. I've been an Ocean View parent for 8 years. I've been involved with the schools that whole time as a classroom volunteer, a PTA volunteer. I served on the Ocean View Site Council and was on the campaign committee for Measure LL in 2014. For several years, I've also been active in supporting progressive policies in Albany, such as the sanctuary city policy addressing immigration enforcement by police and the safe haven policy for the district that protects immigrant families. I'm running for Albany School Board because I care deeply about the importance of public education, both for students and for our society and our democracy. One of the reasons I know many of you are here today. I teach and work with undergraduates at UC Berkeley, most of whom come from California public schools. I believe that we need to do better to address persistent inequality and segregation in our education system. I'm also a skilled manager and administrator with experience in local public finance and in long-term financial planning, managing staff, and improving institutional culture. I think the most important thing for you to know about a potential representative is how they will make decisions. I hope to convince you tonight that I'm sincere about collaborating with stakeholders, that I will seek out information and opinions, critically analyze information, and always act with the principle of equity and inclusion in mind. Thanks.
My name is Stapleton-Gray. I'm running as well as an incumbent with 4 years experience on this board. Most of y'all probably know we do have term limits, so if I'm reelected, it'll be for the last time to the board. And coming with, I guess I'd say, knowledge of how we got to where we are with the budget and how we got where we are with construction and wanting to see both through as grim as some of that may end up being. I've spent an awful lot of my life in education. I've got a doctorate and taught at 3 universities, but I've also been very involved in what happens in Albany. I've had 3 daughters who've gone through school here, including a senior currently at Albany High. And I think committed to education, lifelong education. I mean, I'm taking courses now. I've taken online courses on education, on innovation in education, because I think in part I'd really like to know this, and in part I'd really like to experience what it is to be a student in 2018, well, in the future. To add something to what Sarah said about sort of the need for judgment as a board member, I'd like to say also a little bit about what a board is. You know, I think there are a lot of expectations about what a board is and can do, and we don't run the district. The administration runs the district, the board sets priorities. The board's role is much more, I think, a seeker of truth and fact. So you think of us as having the flashlight of truth that you all help us direct. So if enough people say, hey, this is a problem, the board will get the word and start directing its attention to that, or from its own experience. So that is our role, really. We are opening up conversations and finding facts, much less making day-to-day decisions, so you should expect that of us. Communicate with us however you can, because we are the ones seeking out facts for you.
Okay, thank you. Clementina will begin with the first question. Asian students have voiced they do not feel accurately represented in their history and social studies classes. Given these sentiments, what specific actions would you take to address these concerns?
What is the concern again specifically?
That they don't feel accurately represented in their social studies classes.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, that certainly was a feeling I had 50 years ago, and it obviously hasn't changed today for most students, so that really tells us that we have to address this problem. I, for one, I spoke with a teacher here at the high school about having ethnic studies be a mandate course for all students. And there were a number of concerns, and ultimately she indicated that we should have the history, the culture, everything within American history classes. And I said, that is the way it absolutely should be, but it's not going to happen in my lifetime. I know that. And so that's why I think ethnic studies would be a wonderful course, not only for students of color, but for all students. I think it's a wonderful way to engage in accurate history from different viewpoints. And I think it's respectful of all Americans, and I think it's respectful for students in particular to be able to have those dialogues and have some meaningful discussions around what has happened in American history and what is still going on today, and how you, the young people, can start working to address these problems. Thank you.
I think it's important to take a closer look at academics as it refers to the history of all cultures. In order to truly educate yourself, and in order to have an understanding of everybody, you need to understand the history of all cultures. I think that taking a closer look at that, maybe making some changes would be, important. It's easier to understand why people feel the way they feel and why they approach things the way that they approach them if you understand the history behind it. So we do need to take a closer look at that. And all students should feel represented in their coursework.
So as a board member, I do not have the authority to impose curriculum or to write curriculum. But what the board does have is the authority to encourage staff, to ask staff to revamp curriculum, to provide guidelines for what we want to see in the curriculum. So that's what I can do as a board member. I can work with other board members to establish that as a priority and to provide that kind of direction to staff. I wanted to mention that I was pleased recently that the board was able to approve a whole set of new books brought to us by the English department, which included Howard Zinn and The Color Purple and Ta-Nehisi Coates' Between the World and Me. So I'm very happy to see the English department moving forward in this area.
I think that there are, one of the things that came out of the incidents that happened at the high school a couple years ago is the work that Clementina described the Albany Coming Together Task Force doing in an effort to bring teachers and families and staff together to talk about how we deepen the work of making the curriculum a more accurate and more inclusive space for students. I think unfortunately we missed an opportunity to learn from people who've been through that curriculum, like high schoolers, middle schoolers, to connect that back to the work that teachers are already doing to try to improve how the curriculum reflects the reality of people's lives and the complexity of white supremacy and other histories of our country. And I think that although the board can't prescribe curriculum, I do think the board can enable the continuation of that work that was done, many hundreds of hours that were put in thinking about how we transform the curriculum from K through 12 and build on the work that's already being done. And I think it would be super important to hear from people who've been through that curriculum and have critical feedback, like those of you in the room. Thanks.
Well, Charlie covered most of what I would have said about the approval by the board of a really nice slate of books, not the sort of dead white canon, but a much broader thing. And we as the board have gotten great presentations, say from Ocean View teachers on making their classrooms more multicultural, having parents and grandparents come in and speak and in native language and with the cultural awareness that comes from that. So I'd like to add that in the little time I got remaining, that I would really love to see this district embrace language education much earlier than it does. I mean, it's a shame that we start foreign language education formally in 7th grade when kids' brains are very plastic and malleable. And so what I do for every day on the bus for 10 minutes for free is use Duolingo on my phone to learn Irish for no reason other than it exercises my brain in ways I hadn't anticipated. So if we'd like to broaden awareness of the world, start by teaching people the world languages. We do nobody a service by waiting until they're middle schoolers to even start.
Thank you, everybody. So at the current rate, the new building at the high school is being built. It seems that it won't be finished by the start of the 2019-2020 school year. How do you suggest the elementary school students should be accommodated while their school is being remodeled? And then the second part to that is, will the school environment of these displaced elementary students be compromised? How do you propose to combat this possible effect? Oh, and then we're starting with Brian. So.
It starts with me, right? So I'm not talking for a reason, right? Well, I think that it's important to have a plan in place. I'm sure there are a lot of things that go into reallocating students into a different area, but the foundation of the learning that the students have, it comes from the teachers. And the one thing that I know from being raised by a teacher and currently being married to one is that education can happen anywhere. As long as we figure out a safe space for the students to learn, the teachers will be able to effectively teach the students. But elementary school students, I know for a fact, are creatures of habit. So what we do put in place needs to be something that's comfortable and something that won't change throughout the year, so that they can be comfortable and have a learning environment that will allow them to grow as students.
So the 3-month delay for the high school project, for those who don't know, is because the state review process is going to take an extra 3 months. It means that the high school addition will not be ready at the start of the next school year, but rather by the middle of the next school year. So the current plan is that the 4th and 5th graders at Ocean View will continue to use the classrooms that they're in for the first semester, because the buildings that house those classrooms are not being torn down. The downside is that the 4th and 5th graders will be next to the construction that goes on for the main building at the Ocean View site. But at least they will have a place for the first semester, and then they will move to the high school addition for the second semester.
So as the parent of a 4th grader at Ocean View whose home in 5th grade next year is TBD, I have a lot of thoughts about this issue. One is that I didn't know there was a plan to move them to the construction site. I know that's still an open question because the board has not voted on what the housing plan is for students next year. And one of the reasons that I chose to run for the board is because I thought it was really important for Ocean View families to have a voice in that process as we move forward. And it has become clear that it's vitally important for Ocean View families and subsequently Marin families to be very involved in making a strategy for where those students are going to be for the next 2 and subsequent years, because although students are flexible, maybe more flexible than grown-ups, and can learn in an environment where they have great teachers, there are really important issues about maintaining community at Ocean View over the next 2 years and then Marin. And one of the other debates that the school board has yet to resolve is whether we're going to switch to a morning and afternoon kindergarten situation, which families at some of the other schools are not so crazy about, even though if they don't adopt it, Ocean View kindergartners are back to square one in terms of a home. So I think the challenge of maintaining community both at Ocean View and as a district with a shared feeling of how we're going to care for all of these students is going to be really important over the next 4 years.
So Charlie's answer was more than a bit hypothetical. There's no plan yet for what a new Ocean View will quite look like. The board certainly hasn't seen it as the board, so therefore we can't yet approve something that can't yet go to a division of state architect, et cetera. So I'm not at all sure that Ocean View would be ready to start being constructed in September. And I've found myself as the skeptic, or maybe the realist, on the construction process a lot of the 4 years I've been here. When I first got here, the mood was we could probably get money from the state to build 2 new schools for free. And when that didn't pan out, we did a bond raise that may or may not actually build 2 more schools for what we have left. And I think we will have meetings coming up where we're going to revisit that, and I will really like to hear the answers. We also have a new reality on things like the general fund budget, right? If it's possible to trade off potential future new schools, keeping old schools, and retain more teaching positions, what would you vote for? If it's at the cost of losing a whole elective, or class sizes jumping to 28 from 24, say the elementaries, could we keep Marin and Ocean View, or chunks of Marin and Ocean View? The original plan was to scrape the lot at Ocean View. Well, now we're planning to keep some of it. Let's keep more of it, potentially. So let's come to those meetings on school construction in about a month and talk about that as well. We haven't got a plan fixed firm.
You know, I have seen some plans, Ross, for Ocean View. Maybe they have not been presented to the board yet, but I know that the principal and the community at Ocean View have certainly been working hard on these plans. So there is obviously something in the works, and they have real clear ideas of what they would like to see. More generally, this is one of those issues that is so important to bring the whole community together. All stakeholders need to be involved. That means having the teachers really on board where they're going to carry the students, right, and make the kids feel comfortable wherever they are. And in the end, the site, and I'm not saying, you know, it's a perfect site or anything like that, but kids adjust, they really do. It's us adults that have the harder trouble. So it's the teachers that really have to be able to sell the kids, make them feel comfortable, and the kids will feel comfortable. But that will involve now having the teachers on board and being sure that they are part of the plan, both at Ocean View and Marin, and that they can sell it to the students, and that the parents feel really comfortable about this. So the parents need to be fully engaged in this as well.
So the next question starts with Charlie. What is your long-term vision for electives at the high school? Are you happy with the current makeup, and what changes do you want to see made?
So, my understanding of electives is that what students choose to sign up for is what should be offered. That's my long-term vision. I'm pleased that we still have a 7-period day. I think I might be the only board member who experienced what happened the last time the district tried to eliminate the 7-period day at Albany High. It meant that students' choices for electives were limited. It limited their opportunities. And we wound up with the state imposing penalties on the school district. So I've been there, I've seen that. It's not something I'd like to see. I know that keeping the 7-period day is what allows us to have a well-rounded educational program. It's what allows students to take electives and to meet the requirements that you have to get into the CSUs and the UC system.
I don't know the full spectrum of electives that are offered at the high school. I do think that it's important to follow student demand for the classes that they think they want to take. I also think it's important to be able to build consistency for teachers to be able to plan and program year after year. So a class that may be popular one year and not the next is not necessarily something we should swap out every year. I also think, I have heard that both students and staff feel there are not enough resources going into electives that are more hands-on and technical training. I teach in a city planning department at UC Berkeley that's housed in a college that focuses on design. And I see the importance, even for students who follow the traditional academic route, the importance of learning hands-on engineering, visual design. That kind of learning is valuable for everybody, and I think it's important to make sure that the electives that we offer are responsive to the way that education is being framed and experienced in, I don't know what century, we're in the teens, I guess, or whatever, the 21st century. Thank you.
Well, I absolutely agree with Sarah on the idea of hands-on, and there is supposed to be a career tech ed space in the new high school annex when that rolls in, which won't be too soon. May not be helpful for most of the students in the room, but that is, the board's vision is to expand those sorts of opportunities in career tech ed. I've actually talked to the head of the Alameda Library, Alameda County Library program about thinking of that space potentially as something as a collaboration between the city and the school and the library system where you could make it accessible to anybody 24 hours. And, whatever, say, the city and the library could also pick up in making a space like that very broadly useful, both for in classes and outside classes. I'd also say that I would absolutely love to see us get more into online courses and perhaps change the role of teachers at the school from sage on the stage, as it were, or even the flipped classroom model towards having them be facilitators of things like online courses. If you've got 3 students at the school that would like to do something, there's an online course offered free from MIT or Stanford, having a teacher able to be the guide, mentor, and coach allows you to have 3 students in a class. You will never get 3 students in a class. If that teacher is managing 24 students across 8 different classes, that's another way of getting a lot more diversity into our schools from people giving the resources out for free in higher ed.
I have to say that on one hand, I'm thinking about required courses, meaning adding some, like language. I agree with Ross. 21st century, the students need to be able to communicate around the globe, and certainly to learn a second language is a powerful tool. And some of you come to school knowing a language. All it has to do is be built on, enhanced, given value. And so I think language learning is super important and powerful. And the other is, as I had mentioned earlier, ethnic studies and what I would call race relations, which is of utmost importance. On the other hand, electives are what draw many students to continuing and showing up every day for courses. So I think that it has to be explored, and people here have ideas of how to attract other kinds of classes, online classes, etc. So I'm super supportive of electives too. I just don't know, have to expand the school day. I'm just kidding, but at the same time, I think we really have to explore it. And I think what's really important is to have you, the students, talk more about that. Give the board ideas for what you think would be important, or what you would like to see happen.
I think that electives are important. I think that student input is important. I remember and when I was in college, they allowed the opportunity to be able to create your own course. So for the whole month of January, you could, leading up to January, you could create a course. Allows you the opportunity to figure out what it was that you wanted to study, what you wanted to learn about, and then you could develop that course, you present it to a teacher, and then you go from there. And I think that allowing students to kind of have that creativity is important. And so in order to allow that creativity to flow, you have to give the resources and opportunities to be able to do that. I think that working with teachers to provide those opportunities is important as well, and also going off of what Clementina said, I think that having those courses where you can learn more about other cultures is something that we definitely should incorporate as well, and give students the opportunity to make the choice to learn more about the world around them.
So given that the Albany Teachers Union has not given its endorsement to our incumbent candidates, how would you work in the future to better collaborate and be transparent